Hello everyone, this is the Underdoll, and this is part 2 of the Kotaku article, The Cost of Being a Woman Who Covers Video Games. So let's continue. In 2012 also heralded the start of the Twine Revolution, a huge influx of interactive fiction games developed using the free and easy to use Twine engine. It was coined by Porpentine in a November 2012 post called Creation Under Capitalism and the Twine Revolution on Nightmare Mode. Jesus, that sounds like a Marxist blog, to be honest. A blog founded and run by former Kotaku staffer Patricia Hernandez. Yeah, this isn't a conflict of interest at all. Patricia started working at Kotaku full-time in 2012 alongside several other familiar names. Yeah, the most unethical people in the business. The most famous game to emerge from the so-called Twine Revolution would probably be the Depression Quest, a game by Zoe Quinn with additional writing by Patrick Lindsay and music by Isaac Shankler. That came out February 14th, 2013, and would go on to receive widespread critical acclaim as well as to become the catalyst for Gamergate. Well, see, this acclaim is basically from industry buddies that may not have had a direct conflict of interest, but were friends of Zoe Quinn, and basically defend Zoe Quinn at every turn. And Kotaku has had so many so many ethical breaches in regards to the whole Nathan Grayson not disclosing and sleeping with Zoe Quinn is basically what started all of this, with the Zoe post and the Quinspiracy, and they're surprised that there is some criticism, and the same outlet that basically started all of this is defending Zoe Quinn yet again. And I'm just gonna quickly check for if Maddie Myers actually has any knowledge or any notes on Deep Freeze, because deepfreeze.it logs all of the ethical breaches on games journalism. I highly recommend you read that site or go through it, because it's an excellent overview of what has happened the last few years. And after doing just a little bit of digging, let's look at Maddie Myers and her ethical breaches. So on the deepfreeze.it site, it says, wrote at least twice about Christian love without disclosing apparently well-developed personal relationship, which included discussion of meetings. Oops. Wrote at least 5 times about Zoe Quinn without disclosing what appears to be a very strong personal relationship, which also involved several meetings between the two. So there is no disclosure in this article of Maddie Myers knowing Zoe Quinn. So this is basically again a repeat of Gamergate. All you had to do in this article is to disclose your relationship to Zoe Quinn, but you haven't done that. So yet again, the hypocrisy from these outlets is stunning and brave, so to speak. These games heralded a shift in the gender imbalance in video games. In late 2012, the hashtag #1 reason why and reason to be emerged on social media. I've never heard of this hashtag, to be honest. The first hashtag began circulating on Twitter in an answer as to why there were so few women making video games or games. Choice. Are we gonna have affirmative action just so we can have women for just because they're women in video games? Are we gonna do the same for nurses? Are we gonna have more males in there? How about plumbing, carpeting, sewage workers, bricklayers, construction work? I don't see the same people screeching about gender balance, about those types of jobs. Soldiers on the front lines. Same type of reasoning. Women and the others fill out a number of reasons why hashtag with the depressing but realistic examples of the barriers to entry for would-be gamers, game designers, with some talking about the scrutiny of their appearance and others sharing stories of sexual abuse at gaming conferences. Rhianna Pratchett, the lead writer of Tomb Raider reboot that would be released 2013, participated in the hashtag as well, talking about how often she has to remind her fellow game designers, what if the player is female? As a follow-up, she then encouraged others to share inspiring stories of being in game development. Another number one reason to be hashtag. These hashtags are still in occasional use today, and the Games Developer Conference, the GDC, the circle jerk of gaming, where you have the most unethical people, the most SJW people in a circle jerk, telling each other how great they are, and using Me Too. They went on stage on GDC basically with a sock puppet mocking Gamergate, but no one from Gamergate was ever allowed in there and have a different type of narrative or even a rebuttal. So these people are in an echo chamber at the GDC. They gave Anita Sarkeesian an award for being her, apparently. So same people. Just to keep that in mind. Now hosts an annual number one reason to be panel focusing on the experience of various marginalized people in video games, with recent years expanding the panel's focus beyond just women. Meanwhile, the Pratchett-penned Tomb Raider reboot had seen its own share of controversies and general scrutiny in the run-up to its release. In December 2010, Tomb Raider art director Brian Horton explained that he wanted the protagonist Lara Croft to have a bit of baby fat, then added, "Lara Croft as a sex object isn't our goal. No unlockable bikinis." Okay, who cares? The rebooted version of Lara Croft did not have as an extreme hourglass figure as her original incarnation, but she certainly didn't have baby fat. The rebooted Lara instead seemed to like a stereotypical cool nerd girl who could hang with the guys. Well, barely. She isn't going to be as tall as the men around her, but a head shorter, Horton said at the time. This reinforces the feeling that she is against all odds. Okay, I don't even know what to say to this. In 2012, Tomb Raider executive producer Ron Rosenberg told Kotaku that Lara Croft would be fighting off an attempted rape in the game. Later, he took that back, saying sexual assault of any kind is categorically not the theme that we cover in the game. Rosenberg's waffling underscored the tension that AAA games were experiencing about how to present and market a female-led character. See, you want representation and difficult topics to be in games, but even if they're implied in games. I remember this back during E3 this happened. And just talking about this, basically they wanted to fire this guy even back in 2012 for saying this. So you want representation, you want difficult topics to be explained, feminist topics, but when they are actually put to the forefront and actually wanted to be talked a little bit about, you just want to cancel the guy for saying this. I can't even. Rosenberg had first described how the player would probably want to protect Lara, saying, "She's definitely the hero, but you're kind of like her helper. When you see her have to face these challenges, you start to root for her in a way that you might not root for a male character." I mean, that's great. I don't see any issues with that. Despite the confused marketing campaign leading up to the game, the Tomb Raider reboot largely worked, allowing its protagonist to shift between realistic displays of vulnerability and toughness in ways that Metroid Other M had attempted but failed to do with its heroine in 2010. Tomb Raider also received widespread critical acclaim and sold well enough to show that gaming audiences of 2013 were ready for a different kind of hero in a AAA game. She's Tomb Raider. She's been been there since the 90s, and Samus and other characters, but it doesn't even appear you play or love games. You just want to have your sort of character in games, so you can score a win on these so-called sexists. That's what it appears as. The success of Tomb Raider arguably paved the way for other... No, it didn't. For other female characters to front AAA games. No, it didn't. In the latter half of the 2010s, Aloy in Horizon Zero Dawn, Kate in Gears 5. Well, Gears of 5 wasn't really praised. It wasn't the strongest, probably the weakest iteration, as far as I know from people who played it. Ellie and The Last of Us Left Behind. Well, you ignore the last. It was a DLC. And upcoming The Last of Us Part 2. Most of the other well-known AAA video games that came out in 2013 didn't star female characters. Instead, games like BioShock Infinite and The Last of Us gave us what would be high-profile examples of what was becoming a trend. Big-budgeted games focused around dads. Kotaku's own Steven Totilo observed early phase of a daddening of games. In February of 2010 and 2013, Maddie Bryce dubbed the dadification of games. This trend continued all the way through 2018. Maybe there is a trend because society sees there is a lack of fathers, and maybe this resonates also with the largest demographic of gamers, which are men. And most of them, the majority of them, I would expect, are actual fathers, and it resonates with them. That's marketing 101. And if you make a good game around this, a good story, good gameplay, and something compelling to play as, people are gonna buy it and like it. When God of War rebooted its franchise in dad-themed form, yeah, I mean, look at Mandalorian and The Witcher. Great shows, in my opinion, at least. These games focused on the idea of the protagonist of the game serving in a paternal role to a younger and more vulnerable person. At times, these games lead designers drew the parallel more literally casting themselves as the fathers of the game's characters. Ken Levine described seeing BioShock Infinite's Elizabeth as like a daughter to him. Admittedly, that was in the context of not wanting to see porn of her. God of War's Cory Barlog has also cited his own experiences with fatherhood as influencing the game's direction. Much digital ink has been spilled over the patriarchal themes in these. Oh my god! You couldn't have one a paragraph without becoming a complete moron. Spill over the patriarchal themes in these games, some of which catalogued in Critical Distance compilation of BioShock Infinite's relating writing. Like Metroid Other M in 2010, BioShock Infinite released in March 2013 to largely positive critical reception, but it also had its critics. Writers delved deep into the game's two most prominent female characters, Elizabeth Comstock, the doe-eyed Disney princess-like encapsulation of white female fragility, and Daisy Fitzroy, the black female leader of the Vox Populi, a group of militant revolutionaries fighting against the founders' oppressive rule. Yeah, you left something out of the Vox Populi. They became the fascists themselves. Something someone who actually played the game would know this. Many debates in the early 2010s about the portrayal of women in AAA games had focused predominantly on white women such as Samus Aran and Lara Croft. BioShock Infinite's decision to frame an innocent and sheltered white woman as a sympathetic helper and to cast its politically radical black women as an extremist villain led to critical conversations about the intersection of race and genders. Oh my... So you want more representation, but don't like it when you get it. That's the hilarity of this. Many of the game's detractors sympathize more with Daisy's plight than with Elizabeth. Who? Okay. Wow. You're basically. Are you talking about yourself here? Basically, you're for fascism. This wouldn't really surprise me. But come on, you don't see the oh my god. Much of the pushback against the Infinite's reductive narrative didn't happen at mainstream gaming outlets, but rather at smaller venues with fewer resources, such as Reaction and an independent and short-lived video game blog fund. See, you keep citing these revolutionary and great outlets, but they're so small and unimportant that nobody reads them. And they're somehow should be the center of all conversation within video games. See, this is why no one can take you seriously. This is the second time in the article you cite sites that no one reads, and you hail them as so important. A video game blog founded and led by a trans woman of color in Maddie Bryce in July 2013. That site published an article by my friend Soha Elab Sabawi, who wrote about her own heritage and also in the ways in which Bioshock Infinite did wrong by Daisy Fitzroy, writing, "As I fought the Vox Populi to progress Booker and Elizabeth's story, I kept asking out loud in my empty apartment, why? Why am I doing this?" Well, then you're missing the point of the goddamn. I mean, you can criticize things about the game, but this was clearly a point Ken Levine and the writers did intentionally for the game, because they wanted to say that sometimes the oppressed can also become the oppressor. That was the entire goddamn point. With every member of the Vox Populi I murdered, I was erasing their history and oppression one bullet at a time. They aren't the enemies, they aren't my enemies. So you're for fascism. Congratulations, Kotaku. Just as in previous years, there was an ever-escalating pitch of blowback in response to writers who critique games through lenses other than technical specs. Oh my god. Oh my god. So, you see, she just does another jab at objective reviews. In just 3 years, critical discussion of gender in games had gotten a lot more nuanced than, say, the average Metroid M review from back in 2010. Even mainstream publications had begun regularly addressing the gender politics of games. Why does this matter in games? Why does this matter in games at all? Why does gender politics matter at all in games? Including intersection of race, queerness, and other forms of marginalization, thanks to the increasingly diverse voices of both critics and game creators. Why? How does this make a game better? Why does this matter at all? This is just gibberish. How does any of these weasel words make games any better? It makes them more boring. In March 2013, Feminist Frequency released the first video in the Tropes vs. Women in Games video game series, which she never completed. Just to put that out, 9 years later, after the first video, she has still yet to complete her entire series. Just pointing this out. And Zoe Quinn has not finished her Kickstarter. So the track record of these so-called feminists aren't really good, garnering a level of outrage that had by that point become predictable and expected. After the Depression Quest came out in February, it received widespread critical coverage and accolades, but it also received blowback from a vocal subset of gamers who didn't see text adventures and the many byproducts of the Twine revolution. How does text-based gaming have a revolution in gaming? There are barely any text-based games. Just pointing this out as well, as meriting the same level of coverage as other types of games. Well, people cover Witcher 3 now because of the series, and people play it and like it. That's the reason. Nobody covers Twine games because no one plays them and they're not good. A similar type of blowback fell upon Gone Home, a 2013 indie game about exploring an empty house and learning about its inhabitants. Both the Depression Quest and Gone Home were set in the real world, telling stories about societal forms and marginalizations. A mental health and Depression Quest's case, and a queer coming out of a story in Gone Home. Both games were about day-to-day life and the mundanities that makes us human. See, nobody wants this. Nobody wants this in games. This is why no one likes it, except these pretentious bourgeoisie socialist within gaming journalism. Nobody wants to play this. This is the most mundane things, a walking simulator, reading things. For many critics, the release and success of games like these, how were they successful? I mean, Depression Quest was free, and Gone Home, I mean, it wasn't really a commercial success, so to speak. For many critics, the success of games like these signal an exciting shift in perception of what games could do or be, what stories they could tell, and who could tell them best. No, it didn't. These did nothing for the gaming industry. There are no walking simulation revolutionary games since Gone Home, and there are basically no Twine games after Depression Quest. But by 2013, many mainstream video games publications had significantly diversified of their mastheads as well as the gaming coverage. Games like Depression Quest and Gone Home got written up alongside big-budget mainstream games. Yeah, you did! You, the games journalism that me and others have accused of being unethical, you're the ones pushing this, not gamers. Sorry for being loud during this, but this really irritates me. You're the one pushing this, no one else. Meanwhile, the rise of Patreon and the other crowdfunding methods allowed more marginalized critics and indie video game creators to make a living, if often a mega one. The conversation that had once been on the sidelines, such as the ones how exclusionary the video game industry could be, had entered the forefront. For bigots, that change came too fast. Some began to suspect a sort of conspiracy among journalists. What is Games Journals Pro? What is that? That's not a conspiracy, that's proof. That had forced them all to see the value in small experimental indie games. No, small experimental indie games like Journey, Walking Dead, Dust and Elysian Tale, Mark of the Ninja, etc., etc. Those are good games. Those are experimental games. Not this pretentious walking simulators that these same goddamn journalists are pushing. Experimental indie games that were so different than what had come before. These games, some argued, were hardly games at all and could not possibly merit this much praise and attention. Minecraft changed the entire indie scene. Just saying. And you haven't mentioned it once. It was this line of thinking that sparked and fueled the hate movement known as Gamergate, of course. A movement precipitated on the false derogatory claim that Depression Quest developer Zoe Quinn slept with Kotaku journalists in order to garner positive coverage of the game, which she got twice. This is a lie. We have evidence of this. How can you be over 5 years later and not look at the evidence? You can't even look through said article and say, maybe Nathan Grayson should have disclosed this. No, you haven't even linked the article in about Zoe Quinn, where she gets positive coverage without disclosing the relationship to Nathan Grayson. This line of thinking was first proposed in a blog post written by an ex-boyfriend of Quinn's on August 16th, 2014. Bigoted gamers seized upon it. Yeah, see, just a claim that bigoted gamers, they just have to be bigoted. Nothing else. This is just an assertion, without any evidence or counterclaims. Taking the opportunity to rail against Quinn while arguing that this could account for successes of other marginalized people in the games industry. Along with many other predominantly women, many others, predominantly women, I was accused by total strangers on social media of sleeping around in order to get ahead in the games industry, which you did. You did. Don't lie. Given that I was an underpaid freelancer at the time, my previous full-time employer, the Boston Phoenix, had gone out of business in 2013. This accusation is darkly funny in retrospect, but since I had already been receiving death and rape threats for years by that point, I find it pretty hard to laugh. Well, why didn't you go to the police? Yeah, just saying. Or just go off Twitter. Others, such as Maddie Bryce, Jan Frank, and others were harassed so much and received so many threats that they left the internet significantly to scale back their public presence in the years to follow. Maybe that's the right decision then. Maybe they did the right thing. I mean, everyone gets hate on the internet. You're not some sort of special snowflake that gets threats on the internet. You're not the first one. Kyle Wagner stands by spin essay. The future of the culture wars is here. It's Gamergate. Yeah. Okay. Laid out how Gamergate's tactics worked. Participants organized from forums like Reddit, 4chan, and later 8chan, and Kiwi Farms to issue coordinated attacks against against specific designated targets. Well, you guys said there are no bad target, just bad tactics, or am I getting it mixed up? You're the ones who got people fired and wanted to destroy people's lives. You guys did that. You went after the guy who landed a probe on an asteroid and wanted to destroy his life for wearing the wrong t-shirt during this time. But yeah, we're the evil ones. Just saying. Often using multiple anonymized social media accounts to give illusion of a huge volume of support. Yeah, but you're the ones claiming we are basically the boogeyman of modern time. If we are so insignificant, why are you still writing about us 5 years after the fact? Without any evidence to back up your claims. And even the FBI could not find anything. Just saying. Those attacks included harassment and threats on social media. No sources or links to this, with potential to escalate to calling someone's employer and attempting to get them fired. You're mistaking your own tactics here. And no citation either. In the case of journalists targeting publications, advertisers, and attempting to convince those companies to pull funding, if you're on the other end of a campaign like that, well, you're the ones doing the exact same thing. Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, you've done hit pieces on YouTube, PewDiePie, but you have no issues with this. Kotaku has even done this. And you have the balls to say what we did was wrong. We did it on a much smaller scale to one specific outlet, which was Gawker and Kotaku, where you were unethical, and we showed them you were unethical. But that's a bad target. That's a bad tactic now. Okay. Attempting to convince those companies to pull funding. If you're on the other hand of a campaign like that, it might seem easier to just give up and stop doing what you're doing, to stop writing feminist criticism of a video game. Again, this is a straw man. We wanted to be ethical. Disclose things. Simple stuff, you know. For example, these were tactics that had already worked before, as seen in the coordinated response to anyone who criticized Penny Arcade's Dick Wolf's comic. Well, you're the one who would bully him. So, yeah. Or the coordinated response to projects like Tropes versus Women in Games. These tactics were effective at driving people off the internet, as Kathy Sierra, Jennifer, your own sources disprove this. So you're not even doing a good job making an argument for yourself. And many others could attest, with no citations, of course, if they were still in the public eye. This year, the New York Times published a collection of essays titled "Everything is Gamergate," with a subheading, 5 years ago, a series of vile events changed the way we fight online, but Gamergate had not changed the way we fight online. What changed was the internet, and by extension video games, which slowly but surely had become more accessible to more people. Yeah, so what's the issue? No one's stopping you from playing games. Literally, no one except maybe your own bank account. I knew many of the people involved in every controversy that unfolded. Of course you did. We all went to the same women in gaming panels at conferences, in the same meetups for marginalized people, at industry events. Yeah, you screeched at VidCon that Sargon was a garbage human being, but he didn't have a chance to reply. You all lauded that. Other people would mix me up with a handful of other women writing about games, so at a certain point I figured I may as well keep track of what they were saying, especially when I disagreed with them. We didn't all like each other, we weren't all friends, as the Gamergate conspiracy theorists believe. You were in the same groups, writing the same hit pieces. So how should we not believe that you were collaborating with each other, and different outlets had the exact same quotes, narratives against Gamergate? So we criticize ethical standards, and we're the bad guys. Amazing logic. But we were peers united by the fact that other people kept grouping us together. That's ironic coming from you. Kept casting us as enemies. This is ironic. This is hypocrisy. There was no grand organized conspiracy, just an increased presence of marginalized people, finally given the means to find one another, to talk about and make the games they had always wanted to exist. I think you're talking about Gamergate here, the way it sounds. It was just a series of conversations, a blog here, and a Twine game here. And yet, those individual conversations, each one not so important on its own, became powerful when taken as well, powerful enough to frighten bigots, who in turn worked together to frighten us back. This sounds like a pro-Gamergate paragraph, just saying. At the outset of the 2010, I was 23 years old. I'd been working full-time for the Boston Phoenix since 2008. I covered the nerd culture beat, including cult films, comic books, and video games. I reported on local gaming events. I met several Boston area video game developers, obscure up-and-comers like Zoe Quinn and Brianna Wu. Most of the time I wrote about competitive video games, especially shooters and fighting games, my favorites. And I bet most of your readers didn't have any issue when you did this. On March 31st, 2010, I tossed off a title, Gears Worth 3, adding a female character, ? According to the extended universe of Gears of War comics, books, and novels, the majority of women in the post-apocalyptic Gears of universe were forced into birthing camps instead of fighting the invading Locust Horde. This is biology. When your race or your species is about to collapse or become extinct, you have to basically keep the species alive. That's just logic 101. But oh my god. The only women who were allowed to fight were those who were infertile after spending their childhoods and teen years in these camps. The comic books were described one woman, Alexandra Brandt, who as a teenage girl was raped repeatedly by her captors before finally turning 18, at which point she was officially declared infertile and sent to fight on the front lines. Well, doesn't this show that women are valued more than men? So men are sent to die, and only those who can't birth children, those are sent to the front lines. But the entire point misses these feminists. In 2010, my criticism of gender politics in the Gears universe was not that deep. I kept that simple, writing, what if a woman just didn't want to make babies and wanted to serve humanity in another way? After all, I reasoned Gears of War was clearly a power fantasy for its beefy, cartoonish male heroes. Why weren't women allowed to participate in the absurd power fantasy too? Because that's what the creator of the game wanted. What's so hard to understand about that? See, why can't you just make your own goddamn games? You just lauded Gone Home and Depression Quest, but you want to change other games as well. My hastily written and thinly argued post blew up. It even got linked on Kotaku. I got messages from people who said they wanted to hurt me, shoot me, to prove me that a woman like me couldn't survive in a battlefield, virtual or otherwise. Wait, so they wanted to show you in a game that you weren't good enough to say what you preached. So that's what you're complaining about? Really? So people ask you for proof and to show you what that you could preach, what you could do, or actually let's do a race or something. And that's how somehow sexist. At first, I viewed these messages as stupid and dismissed it night after night, though I lay awake questioning my career choices. The more messages I got, the worse I felt. Why didn't you just ignore them? Or take them to the police if they were breaking the law? I didn't take good care of myself in the wake of that experience. I read every single email. Why would you do this? Every comment, every forum post about what I had written, wrote multiple follow-up blog posts, and responded to far many comments. I wanted gamers to see that I wrote the post because I care, because I'm one of them. I could tell they saw me as an outsider. You are an outsider. You want to have politics in games for no reason whatsoever other than you whammon. I thought if I could only convince them that I wasn't, the harassment would stop. I blamed Kotaku, at least in part, for linking to my article in the first place, even though I knew that that wasn't entirely fair, but none of it felt fair. What if someone came to the Phoenix offices to kill me? Yeah, see, this is the victim mentality. You want equality, but when you get backlash, you are the victim. All because I had written a blog post. Why did I have to be so scared just for writing down on the internet that I wanted to play as a female character in one of my favorite games, ideally a female character who hadn't been raped repeatedly and marginalized from birth? It didn't seem like very much to ask. So you are not. You claim to be a strong feminist, and men are just fragile and can't handle women in games. But when you get some backlash and criticism, you don't even link to your blog and said comments calling you out, and you act like a victim in your own article. Now it's 2019, Gears 5 came out earlier this year. It has female character who is not only playable but the lead character of the game. She didn't grow up in a breeding camp, although the post-apocalyptic world of Gears is still just as harrowing. Its female characters aren't in constant sexual peril. Instead, they're in a lot of different types of peril, just like everybody else in the world of the game. I reviewed Gears 5 for Kotaku, a website where I now work as managing editor. The past 10 years almost sound like a victory if I just leave it out how bad it felt to experience. After all, it's normal to talk about gender in games now. No, it's not. It's only normal in your own echo chamber. It's not even that weird for a game to have a female lead. No, it's not. You're making it out to be. You even complained how Lara Croft looked like, even though she's been around since the 90s, but that's not good enough. It's almost trendy. No, it's not. It's just games. Oh my god. Replacing your muscle-bound white dude character with a thin white woman is just another way to stand out in a crowded marketing landscape full of two similar titles. You can even make the white lady gay, really blow some minds. So, gay women exist. Whoop-de-doo. I can be jaded about that now because I can recognize that changes we still haven't gone far enough. But in 2010, it would have blown my mind. Okay. because all of that was impossible for me to imagine. Video games still have so many more daring stories they could tell, but it's obvious that the medium has changed over the past 10 years in vital and easily observable ways. Unfortunately, that change has not come easily, and it has not been nearly as transformative as it should have been. At the beginning of you don't offer any solutions either. Congratulations. At the beginning of 2010, I had no idea how often I would be terrified of the next 10 years to be writing about video games and gender. I had no idea how tired and jaded I would become by the time 2020 arrived. I had no idea that Gamergate would become international news. The various people I had met in passing at local gaming meetups would become talking points for mainstream political pundits beyond the world of games. I had no idea how much games would change and how hollow and pointless the supposed victories would often feel comparison to the fear and the pain I experienced and watched my peers experience. In the early 2010s, the world games criticism felt small. The few people who pushed back against the status quo tended to stand out in the the sites you quoted. It sounds like they all went out of business or are still irrelevant. In the early 2010s, they were easy to find, easy to follow, easy to remember, easy to target. It was just video games. But it felt huge and all-consuming. My peers and I felt like we were fighting for our lives. Oh my god! You have people on literally on in war zones, but you are fighting for your lives, talking about video games and getting criticism for them. This is peak feminism. After all, our lives were threatened often because of the jobs we had. Yeah, why didn't you go to the police? Again. It's hard to keep a healthy perspective when you're in that situation. Even now, it's hard for me to tell which of these controversies mattered at all, which ones moved the needle forward and which ones didn't. Okay. I'm also sure that there were plenty of groundbreaking games and debates that I missed entirely. So what is the point of you being a journalist if you can't even notice these things? Many of the people whose work influenced me in most of the early 2010s have left games journalism or the games industry. Well, good, because they're trash. The ones who have stayed this whole time are not the same. Many have significantly scaled back their online presence. Good. Not everyone needs a megaphone these days. Over the past 10 years, the hottest gaming tips I learned from my peers were about how to delete my address and phone number from people who find their websites. Okay. I've trained myself to close the tab when I've read too many cruel comments about myself. I have improved my reaction time and meeting and blocking people. So, we're the fragile ones again, but you live literally in an echo chamber online when you get criticism. Oh, wow. I can barely recognize the person I was in 2010, man. She thought she knew she'd seen some shit, but she had no idea. She's still me, and though even now I lie awake and oh my god, I lie awake at night sometimes, wonder why I chose to do this. Oh my god. Just as I used to wonder back then, I think about people who quit, the ones who got driven out by hate mobs, lack of resources, or both, but especially, well, get woke, go broke. Especially the ones whose work was much better and much bolder than mine. I think about how independent and diverse newsrooms have propelled these changes and how afraid I am of losing that. There's still so much left to do, and still so many bigots who wish more than anything for a return to my exclusionary status quo. According to whom? Just according to you. All I know is I'm not done yet. This woman is either full of lies, mentally ill, delusional, maybe all of the above. So she has anxiety for online comments. These people need to grow a spine. Anyways, thank you guys for watching, and see you guys next time. Bye.